The November 4th, 1950 issue of Wrestling as You Like It is a classic glimpse into professional wrestling during the early days of the National Wrestling Alliance, NWA. This publication, produced weekly, provides an inside look at matches, rivalries, upcoming events, and in-depth coverage of wrestling stars of the era. The magazine is a valuable historical document that captures the vibrant and evolving world of wrestling in the mid-20th century. Tap major highlights from the issue. Cover features and key stories. Lou Thesz in Chicago, upcoming NWA Championship defense. Buddy Rogers' popularity surge. Hans Schnobel versus Buddy Rogers, Marigold Gardens showdown. Gorgeous George's influence on wrestling's popularity. The Mighty Atlas challenges Lou Thesz. Billy Darnell versus the Mighty Atlas, Clash of Styles. Cyclone Anaya and the Great Balbo, wrestling technique demonstration. Johnny Barron's rise in popularity. The growing popularity of TV wrestling. Vern Gagn's early success in the junior heavyweight tournament. Women in wrestling. The role of female fans. Historical perspective on wrestling legends. Fred Kohler, the life of a wrestling promoter. Match results and upcoming cards in Chicago and Midwest wrestling scene. Detailed breakdown of key articles and events. Lou Thesz in Chicago, defending the NWA Championship. Legendary NWA heavyweight champion Lou Thesz was scheduled to wrestle in Chicago on December 8th. Promoter Fred Kohler was considering several challengers for Thesz, including Buddy Rogers, who was transitioning into a fan favorite, Gorgeous George, the flamboyant heel, Hans Schnabel, a top villain, the Mighty Atlas, Wild Bill Longson. The article highlights that Chicago was a major hub for wrestling, with Thesz's title defenses drawing massive crowds. The NWA's heavyweight division was described as being stacked with talent, ensuring major matchups in the near future. Buddy Rogers' popularity surge discusses how Buddy Rogers, known for his cocky attitude and technical skills, had adopted a more sportsmanlike style, leading to a resurgence in fan support. The Illinois Athletic Commission and promoter Fred Kohler were credited with convincing Rogers to tone down his rule-breaking. Rogers offered a $5,000 challenge to Lou Thesz for a title match, further increasing anticipation. The magazine notes that his blonde hair, arrogance, and charisma made him a star, foreshadowing his eventual reign as NWA World Champion and later the first WWE Champion in 1963. Hans Schnabel versus Buddy Rogers, Marigold Gardens showdown. The main event for the Marigold Gardens event was announced as Hans Schnabel versus Buddy Rogers. Schnabel, a classic villain, was known for his brutal tactics, such as the blockbuster hold and backbreaker. Rogers admitted that this would be a major test, as Schnabel was known to push opponents to their limits. The implication that Schnabel may be weakened from a match against Gorgeous George the night before was mentioned as a potential advantage for Rogers. Gorgeous George's influence on wrestling's popularity. The magazine acknowledges Gorgeous George's impact on wrestling and his ability to sell out arenas. Notes that his flamboyant persona, golden robes, and human orchid gimmick were drawing mainstream attention. The article also highlights how Gorgeous George's style of sports entertainment was helping wrestling transition into a spectacle beyond just competition. The Mighty Atlas challenges Lou Thesz. The Mighty Atlas, a physically imposing wrestler, was positioned as a strong contender for the NWA World Championship. He had dominated the Midwest scene with his power-based offense. Promoters from across the country were looking to book Thesz versus Atlas as a high-stakes title match. Billy Darnell versus the Mighty Atlas, Clash of Styles. Billy Darnell, a technically gifted wrestler from Philadelphia, was set to face the Mighty Atlas. The match was described as a speed versus power battle, with Darnell needing to avoid being overpowered. Darnell was optimistic about his chances, believing Atlas was slower than Buddy Rogers, making it easier for him to counter moves. Cyclone Anaya and the Great Balbo, wrestling technique demonstration. A segment focused on escapes and counters, using a series of posed photographs demonstrating wrestling holds. Cyclone Anaya versus the Great Balbo provided examples of technical escapes, including blocking a leg pickup and executing a double winglock. The magazine highlighted wrestling's technical aspects, showing that it was not just brawling, but a strategic sport. Johnny Barron's rise in popularity. Johnny Barron, a young star, was gaining traction in the Chicago wrestling scene. Described as having a natural charisma and it factor, much like Rocky Graziano in boxing or Joe DiMaggio in baseball. The magazine predicted that Barron could become one of wrestling's top draws. The growing popularity of TV wrestling. The issue discusses how television was reshaping wrestling, particularly in Chicago, Denver, Los Angeles, New York, Boston, and Philadelphia. Fans were outraged when WGN-TV stopped airing weekly wrestling shows, leading to speculation that it would return. Televised wrestling was becoming a major source of revenue, allowing wrestlers to become nationally recognized stars. Vern Gaines' early success in the junior heavyweight tournament. Vern Gagne was participating in the NWA Junior Heavyweight Championship tournament in Tulsa. He had defeated Angelo Martinelli and was among the favorites to win. The magazine predicted Gagne had a bright future, which was accurate as he went on to become one of the biggest names in wrestling and later the founder of the AWA. Women in wrestling, the role of female fans. The article discussed whether women were more rabid fans than men. Observations included, women were more vocal, screaming and biting their nails. Men were more reserved but equally passionate. The conclusion, both genders were deeply invested in wrestling. Historical perspective on wrestling legends. Mentions legendary wrestlers like Dano O'Mahony and Crusher Casey. Highlights that wrestling constantly evolves with new characters, styles, and techniques. Fred Kohler, The Life of a Wrestling Promoter. A behind-the-scenes feature on promoter Fred Kohler showcases his non-stop schedule, including booking matches, handling logistics like moving rings, negotiating TV contracts, dealing with wrestler injuries, provides a rare look at how wrestling was run in the 1950s. Match results and upcoming cards. Recaps of recent Chicago wrestling events, including matches featuring Buddy Rogers, Hans Schnubel, and Johnny Barron. Upcoming major matches at Marigold Gardens and Madison Arena. Final thoughts on the November 4th, 1950 issue. This issue of Wrestling As You Like It provides a fascinating snapshot of wrestling's golden age. It highlights Lou Thesz's dominance as NWA champion, the rise of Buddy Rogers and Johnny Barron, Gorgeous George's influence on wrestling's entertainment value, how TV was changing the industry, the deep roster of wrestling talent in the Midwest,